Hi, I'm Tim Clark, a Director at Harris & Clark Chartered Surveyors. In this video, we will be considering what items a landlord can do to prepare for a dilapidations claim. We understand that not all landlords are well versed in dilapidations, so when we are asked to help them bring a claim for dilapidations at lease end, we often find ourselves giving our landlord clients advice about how best to prepare for a dilapidations claim. Just as a commercial agent advises landlord tenants on how best to prepare a commercial unit for relet, which normally involves stripping out and redecorating a unit, we can help a landlord achieve the best level of dilapidations recovery at lease end. It isn't always as cut and dried as some landlords think. A tenant who has breached their lease has not always caused their landlord to incur a tangible loss. However, if a landlord wants to ensure the standard of their property doesn't gradually diminish over time, there are steps that can be taken, and in many instances, the cost of doing so can be passed back to the tenant. On a short to medium term lease, perhaps up to 10 years in duration, a landlord should consult a specialist dilapidation surveyor around a year before lease end. This will give the surveyor an opportunity to review the lease and flag up any areas of concern. For a longer lease, perhaps 2 or 3 years prior to lease end would be suitable. Of particular interest at this stage is the reinstatement clause. Some leases will require the landlord to give 6 months' notice if they want a tenant to reinstate alterations. More typically, 3 months or no time period is stated, but it's better to find this out before the right to reinstatement is lost. To be extra cautious, it would be worth asking a dilapidation surveyor to review the lease a year before a break date arises. It isn't unknown for a lease to contain the requirement for the landlord to give 6 months' notice for removal of alterations, at the same time as allowing a tenant to break their lease upon 6 months' notice. If in doubt, landlords should serve a reinstatement notice immediately upon receipt of a break notice. Ideally, a good dilapidation surveyor will discuss the remainder of the process with you, but that would make for a pretty short video. Once you and your surveyor understand your lease, you should commission a schedule of dilapidations to be sent to the tenant within a suitable timescale. We normally advocate that this is done prior to the lease end, as this gives the tenants the opportunity to complete necessary works themselves, leaving a property which is capable of reletting. If not prepared before lease end, the schedule should be prepared as soon as practical afterwards. The more time is left between lease end and preparation of the schedule of dilapidations, the more chance the tenant has of claiming the disrepair arose after the lease had ended, meaning that they would not be responsible for it. Having given the tenant the opportunity to complete suitable remedial works, if they do so, this is great, as it means that the unit can be relet and the dilapidation situation has concluded. You should ask your dilapidation surveyor to inspect the works completed to confirm that the works have been completed satisfactorily and whether any material outstanding works remain. If, however, your tenant fails to complete the necessary work or only completes some of it, it's possible that the landlord has suffered material loss in a number of ways. These are explored next. Sometimes, an incoming tenant will recognise that a building is in disrepair and will claim additional rent-free to help them cover the cost of remedying the defects in exchange for taking on a fully repairing and insuring lease. In this situation, the landlord should document in the heads of terms the reason for the rent-free period. A typical market incentive rent-free period will be around 3 months as a rule of thumb, so if the tenant secures a 9-month rent-free period, for example, it should be noted that the additional rent-free period in excess of normal market incentives is a result of disrepair. Landlords must be honest when doing this. While sometimes the entire rent-free period can be attributed to disrepair, such as in specialist properties or in a particularly buoyant market, not being candid about the split between market incentive and disrepair rent-frees can cause arguments at dilapidation stage. Trying to claim the entirety of the rent-free as attributable to disrepair can lead to diminished trust between surveyors at lease end, harming the overall chances of successful dilapidations recovery. If a subsequent tenant relets a unit with a schedule of condition watering down their repairing obligations, We can sometimes claim for damages for future work which will be required to put the building into good repair at the end of the next lease. These types of claim can be very difficult to bring, as these claims, by their nature, are riddled with what-ifs. Dilapidations does not like uncertainty. If it is uncertain that a landlord will incur a cost, that particular cost is often removed from a dilapidations claim. Due to the uncertainty of whether the work will be completed, the value of the work needed is sometimes seen as a stand-in for a formal diminution valuation, meaning that the property could be worth market value less the cost of outstanding work. This is fine in theory, but as no VAT loss has been incurred, and it isn't certain this will be incurred, this will mean that any potential damages in lieu of VAT will have to be removed from the claim, likely reducing the total recoverable claim by over 16%. If works arising out of the previous tenant's failure to adhere to lease clauses are genuinely necessary to safeguard the value of the landlord's property, it is often advisable for the landlord to complete these works. The main benefit of this is that the cost of work can be passed back to the tenant, including professionals' fees involved in overseeing the work. The property will potentially re-let quicker, as it will be seen to be more attractive to potential lessees. In the unlikely event the dispute ends up in court, the court is far more likely to award damages for works completed rather than those forming a theoretical loss. And money spent now can be more tangibly measured than money perhaps needing to be spent in the future. If a landlord completes work, they will need to be seen to have done so using a value for money contractor, although this doesn't always mean the lowest tender cost, and will need to complete records of all works completed as well as tender documentation. Don't forget, the cost of raising finance to cover such works can also be claimed back from the former tenant. I appreciate that this video gives a generic guide on best practices. However, as with anything dilapidations, the best advice is that tailored to your individual situation. If you would like to discuss how to prepare for a dilapidations claim, our team of expert dilapidation surveyors can be contacted on 023 81 55 0051.
If you like this content, give us a thumbs up and subscribe.